Hello and welcome to my beginner's tutorial for Windows 10. Let's take a look at the screen here. At the top is your desktop on which you may have a variety of icons as we have here. In the lower left hand corner is the start button. Okay, there is a line of icons on the left. The first one at the bottom here is power. If you click on that, this is how you can, shut down, restart, or put your computer to sleep. Okay, and the next one is settings. That if I clicked on that, it would open the settings app. And then we have quick links to your pictures and your documents, at least the default folders where those would be stored. And the very top icon is your account, right? So in this case, the account name is owner. And if I click on that, I can sign out, I can lock the machine. If you're in a situation where you need security, you can click on lock and the screen, kind of like a screensaver lock screen will come up, and anyone who wants to use the computer from that point forward will be prompted for your password, right? And then you can jump in and change some account settings as well. All right, so that's the start button. And to the right, we have the shortcut panels here. These can be moved around, right? This is an environment that began in Windows 8, and you can add things from here to here, I should say, or you can delete things from here, right? And of course, the main area is this scrollable list of all the software and apps that are installed on your machine. And they are ordered alphabetically. And if you click on any of the letters, like if I click on P here, you'll see a list of all the letters in the alphabet, and any that have actual entries will be brighter. And for example, if I wanted something in the M area, I could click on M and then find Mail or Microsoft Edge or what have you, right? So other things that you might want to know here are if you right click on any of these icons, you get a bunch of options. And under more here, you can either pin or unpin from the taskbar down at the bottom of the screen. You can adjust some settings depending on the app, and you can also pin or unpin from start. So if I unpin, then we see that Edge disappears there, and if I right click and pin to start, then it appears or reappears in this case. So to the right of the start button, you'll either have this search box or a little search icon, typically speaking. And here you could actually do Google searches, right? So if we wanted to, search for horses, I could just type in the word horses and hit enter, and search would come up in your default browser with your default search engine, right? Also, you can search for programs. So there is a settings app, Windows 10 settings app, but if you're more familiar with the old style control panel, you can actually start typing in the name of that. So, type in the word control, and you'll see a best match for your system. Control panel here will be one of the entries, and if we click on that, we'll have the control panel. You can maximize that. I prefer the view by small icons, but you can also go into the category view if that's what you're more familiar with, all right? And here we can do things like, check out the system. And this system, for example, has an Intel Xeon processor, 8 GB of RAM, and we can tell here that Windows is properly activated. Right? And we can also look at our version. So Windows 10 Pro is what's on this machine. All right, so that's a quick way to get to things. Even if you wanted to, say, jump into Notepad, any software on the machine, generally speaking, will come up if you do a search for it. Right? So, and next to search, you will find Cortana. Okay, so now Cortana is like the Microsoft AI. You can talk to her and she'll answer questions, all that kind of thing. I tend to prefer not to use Cortana just for privacy concerns and also performance issues. If the computer is constantly listening to hear if you would like to tell it something, well, you know, that's a bunch of processing that you could do without if you don't really use that feature much. So that and a few other things we can clear up off of the taskbar uh, in a typical case. So, you know, you've got your start, you've got your search area here, you've got your taskbar here, and you've got your notification area on the bottom right. So let's right click, I should say, on the taskbar, and I'm going to uncheck Show Cortana button, for example, right? And also for search, instead of the big search box there, which takes up quite a bit of room, we can have it show search icon, right? You see how it condenses into this little icon. And then if you click on that, you still get the box shows up right above that, which in my opinion is a much more optimized way to work, right? Now, when you open programs, your the active programs will be highlighted in this way. So say if I opened up Edge and I got the File Explorer open, we'll get the highlighted icons on the taskbar. So it shows you what's open. Now they'll start to stack if you have additional instances open. So say if I right click here on File Explorer and I click on File Explorer again, then I get two instances of it, right? If I minimize Edge there, we can see the two of them. And you'll notice that it kind of layers, but it's very subtle. And for my purposes, when I'm working, I don't want that kind of subtlety. I don't want to have to hover over the two icons and see the previews and then choose between them, which is of course the default of how things work. I prefer a larger, more descriptive icon and had to have them separated. So to do that, we can right click on the taskbar and go to taskbar settings. And under the combine taskbar buttons option, I prefer to choose never, right? And then you'll see what happens down here. I can close, see, well, we got settings open, we've got our two file explorers, and we've got our Microsoft Edge. So it's much easier to distinguish between them and to see even how many there are open at one time, right? So now if I close settings, you see that closes, and I can easily click between these two or this third one, and it's just that much more obvious of what's going on, right? So let's close these off here. And other things that I find, you know, as a guy who um, services computers, I don't know anybody who uses this people icon, and very few people use the touch keyboard, right? So if we right click, we can uncheck show touch keyboard, and we can uncheck show people on the taskbar, right? Now there is one other icon that you may want to either use all the time or you may never use, right? And that is this task view button here, or icon I should say. When we click on that, it will give you a nice view of everything that's running on your computer. It will show you the various desktops that you can use, give you the ability to add a new desktop. So if you're uh, say you'd like to optimize one desktop for home use and one desktop for work use, that kind of thing, you can switch between them and in this area and manage which icons appear there and which backgrounds, that kind of thing. But again, very few people actually use that in my experience. So if you don't need that extra icon sitting there, we can uncheck that as well. Right now in the notification area over here in the bottom right, don't forget that there's this little up arrow here. If there's enough icons that the system will start to hide some of them. And here you can see other things that are running. Okay, now you'll see on this icon there's a little triangle with an exclamation point on it. If I click on that one, that's sort of like a prompt for that something wants attention, right? So here it's saying that virus and threat protection is actually turned off. So we can either dismiss that notice or we can turn it on, which of course I think is a good idea. So let's turn that on, and we can close this. But the thing I wanted to point out here is that you can manage which icons appear here, and whether you want this area to collapse at all. So once again, if you right click and go to taskbar settings and then look at the notification area options, you can select which icons appear on the taskbar. Okay, so say if you don't use Microsoft OneDrive, you're not interested in seeing its status all the time, you can go ahead and turn that off, and you'll see that it disappears right away from the notification area, right? And then also, you may decide that you don't want anything to hide and you want to show everything so that you have a complete view of what's running in your notification area. So you can choose always show all icons in the notification area, right? So you can choose that option. Um, I'm going to turn that off, and I'll keep those two. Windows security, actually, that one I would think would be more important than OneDrive for myself, so I'll turn that one on. And yeah, that's good. That's an optimization there. So also, here's your system time. If you've got a brand new computer, that time may not be accurate, right? So you may want to right click here and go to adjust date and time, right? Here you can do things like choose your time zone, uh, add whether it is going to adjust for daylight savings time automatically or not, right? And you can also have it set the time automatically. Once you choose your time zone, it can check on clocks and do that kind of thing. Now, if we turn that off, then you can click here and change the date and time manually, right? But I'll just keep that on, and we'll close off this area here. And so that is a general introduction to the spacing and icons down at the bottom there. Now, in terms of the icons on your desktop, right, those can be easily managed as well. So say there was an icon that you don't particularly need, you can always drag that into the recycle bin, for example, right? And if you've made a mistake doing that, you can press Control Z on your keyboard and undo that. Also, you can right click and rename icons if you find that the name isn't legible or obvious enough, right? And if you click off the icons just on the desktop itself, you get a bunch of other options. For example, you can choose to view large icons, or the default medium icons, or if there's a lot of icons on your desktop and you'd like to have a bit more room, you can choose the smaller ones, right? And you can also choose how they're sorted. So we can, you can sort by name, or you can sort by type, um, or even by date modified, right? And also under view, you can have auto arrange icons selected, which will, any new icons will just automatically go to the left edge of the screen and sort according to your sorting scheme. Um, if you don't like that, if you like to put your icons anywhere that you want and not have them constantly streaming to the one side of your desktop, you can uncheck auto arrange icons if it has been checked. And if you like a clean desktop, you can actually uncheck show desktop items, and then you'll see nothing except for your background, right? And for some people, that's how they like to work, because they find all the icons are very distracting uh, visually, and they prefer the cleaner access through the start button or the taskbar, right? So and of course, with, as I mentioned, with the auto arrange off, you can move icons around wherever you'd like them. Sometimes people have a picture on their desktop with a central item in the picture, and they don't want that covered, so they arrange all of their icons around that, right? So let's look at a few important things. If you have a new computer, or even if it's not so new, one important aspect is to keep it updated, right? So you can click on the Start button and go to Settings. Okay, and the last item in Settings generally is Update and Security. So if you click on that, you'll be in the Windows Update area. Now sometimes what happens is you end up, instead of on the main Windows Update screen, you end up on one of these other uh, categories down here. So just click on Windows Update to make sure that you're in the right area here. And here we have various options about controlling Windows Update. Let's pop into advanced options for a moment and just make sure that receive updates for other Microsoft products when you update Windows is turned on. Okay. And you know, that's important if you have Microsoft Office or anything else. You want to keep that in sync with the updates when possible. Now there are other options here. I would suggest turning on show a notification when your PC requires a restart to finish updating. It's always good to be notified of when your computer is going to restart. Um, that way you'll know maybe not to leave something running overnight. That's just going to be interrupted if your computer is going to restart after an update, right? And there are also options here to pause updates. So um, if you don't like the aggressive Microsoft updating schedule, you can defer updates for up to 35 days. But just be warned that after that 35 days, you're essentially going to be forced to update your computer, right? So, but you may like the peace that comes with not having updates streaming in every couple of days and, you know, interrupting your workflow or what have you, right? Um, let's go back here. And you can always view update history if you'd like to see what updates have been applied or even what updates have failed. Sometimes updates don't come in properly, and you might want to check out when they failed and which ones. Right? You can also change the active hours. Right? So the idea of active hours is, you know, many updates, most updates, in fact, require your system to restart, and this will happen automatically. And as I sort of suggested earlier, if you're running backups or anything else that may take a long time, a long processing uh, application, uh, that's just going to run overnight, and you don't want your computer to restart during that time. You can always change your active hours here, right? So you can click on change and choose new time, start time, and end time, and hit save, right? So you know, that can be critical depending on what you're up to. And there's also a choice to automatically adjust your active hours for this device based on activity. So if you turn that on, Microsoft will uh, kind of record when you're typically using your computer, and then will typically not restart during those times, right? So also here, a quick way to pause updates. You can click uh, this several times to pause updates for 7 days, and then if you click it again, it'll be 14, and you click it again, 21, etc. Right? So up to the 35 that we saw in the advanced options. So this is a quick way to pause updates. And of course, if you want to check for updates, go ahead and click on this button. Now, typically, uh, when you jump in here, you'll often see, you know, you're up to date, right? And a last checked time. What I find on many systems when I go in to service them is that it will say you're up to date, but if I click on check for updates, it will find 2 or 3 or 4 updates and then apply them, right? So if you want to be proactive about updates, go ahead, even if you see the you're up to date bit, click the button, and then if after doing an immediate check it again says you're up to date, then of course you are up to date. but in many cases you aren't quite, right? You're not on the cutting edge of updates. So if you'd like to be, go ahead and click that button, even if it says you're up to date, at least one more time, all right? Now, in terms of your desktop background, if you right click on your desktop and go to personalize, you'll find a bunch of options for background and colors for your lock screen, etc. Right? So if your background, if you'd like to have a picture, you've got that option here. You can also choose solid colors, right? I tend to like just having a black solid background, right? Myself, but also you can use a slideshow, and whichever option you choose, the options below will change to give you access to the feature that you like, right? So, as it was the case with solid color, it shows me the bunch of colors, and in the case of a picture, we can choose a picture, right? So they do have a bunch of pictures that you can switch between, right? And you can also browse and find a picture on your system, right? And then once you've found it, you can click on it and then just click on choose picture. I don't actually have any pictures on this system at the moment, so I can't actually complete that action there. And then when you do choose a picture, you've got your fit options, right? So you may want to have the default here of stretch, right? But depending on the picture, if it's a square picture and your screen is a wide screen, it's going to stretch out and perhaps look very odd, right? In which case you would probably want to better to choose center. There's also a tile option or a fill option, and the fill option would be um, to fill the whole screen, but not stretch when it's filling. So something may be cut off on either the top or the bottom or the left and the right, but the whole screen will be filled with the picture. It's kind of like zooming in until the screen is filled with the picture, right? So you can experiment and see how each of those work with the picture that you've chosen, and pick the one that best suits you visually, right? And of course, with the slideshow, you can choose an album. Uh, the default would be pictures, of course, but you can choose any folder, fill it up with pictures, and it will change it on the schedule that you suggest. The default here is 30 minutes, but if you like things to move much faster, you could set it to 1 minute, or you could have it just change every day, right? Depending what you'd like. And you can also choose to shuffle the pictures or not, have them come up in a random order, or otherwise they'll come up in the order that they're found in the folder, right? And again, you've got your fit options, so you can choose that as well, all right? So that's an introduction to changing your background. Now you can also tweak the colors on your system. You can choose light or dark modes, transparency effects. So again, this is sort of a personal preference area, right? Um, so if you're interested in playing here, just kind of tweak things and check things off and choose different colors and experiment until you find something that's visually appealing to you. All right. Now there's a lock screen area. Right. So again, if you want to run the lock screen or activate the lock screen, you can always click on Start and go up to the account icon at the top left there and choose lock, right? Another quick way to do that is to hold down your Windows key and press L. That will also lock your system. So here you can choose again what kind of background you'd like on your lock screen. You can choose whether you want any apps to run. In this case, it's the default calendar, right? Show the time and the date, right? And you can have other apps show status there, and just other visual bits here. You can have Cortana settings for the lock screen, so whether you can talk to your computer and have it respond while it's on the lock screen, and you can change the timeout settings here, etc. Right? So in terms of your screen turning off, um, you can set the time here. I prefer not to have it turn off or go to sleep at all unless I tell it to do so. Um, but that, of course, is a personal choice, right? Now, other options for your desktop, if we go into personalize, there are full themes that you can choose from, right? So your standard Windows, there's a Windows Lite, Windows 10 here, there's a flowers theme, and then there's a get more themes in Microsoft Store option. So there'd be hundreds of themes that you could choose from. So, if you like to do a seasonal theme, have a holiday Halloween theme, for example, you can always find that kind of thing in the store, right? Also, you can choose fonts, and here's where you can actually install new fonts on your system by dragging and dropping them into this area, right? You can get more fonts in the Microsoft Store, and you can review what fonts you do have with a preview of each, which is really nice. So you can use this as a reference when you're doing design in some software, etc. And there's also a start area here, and this affects the start area to the right of the list on the start button, right? And there's just a bunch of options there. Uh, main one would be use start full screen, right? So if you really like to focus on having the startup tiles, and that's the way you like to work, you may want to turn that full screen and have that much more real estate to work with, right? And then of course there was the taskbar settings that we've jumped into recently by right-clicking on the taskbar, and here's a bunch of options, one of which that many people like to use is automatically hide the taskbar in desktop mode. So if we turn that on, then the taskbar will hide at the bottom while you're doing other things, and then if you just go down with your cursor and touch the bottom of the screen, it will pop back up. I prefer to have it on all the time, but I can totally see how particularly if you're doing design work or watching a movie or something, you might want that to disappear, right? And other things that are often critical for people is to set your display settings. So if you right click on the desktop and click on display settings, here's where you can affect the display resolution and the scale and layout sizes here. So the screen resolution, generally speaking, will be set to the highest level. Right now I'm at 1280 by 768, but on this system I can go to this crazy number, 3840 by 2400. Now if I go to that higher resolution, everything will appear smaller on my screen because it's fitting more and more in, right? If you have poor eyesight, you may want to choose a lower resolution, right, which will make everything bigger on the screen. But just keep in mind that you don't, like say here there's 1280 by 720 and we got a 1280 by 768. Unless you're forced to, don't go to anything lower height-wise than 768. Many software or app bits will not um, display properly with a 720. What you'll find is that you'll have say an options box will pop up and the OK and apply buttons will be off the screen, right? Because they're assuming, many programmers assume that you have at least 768 pixels high on your system. So try not to go lower than that. And otherwise, just experiment and see which resolution works best for you visually. Another thing to keep in mind is that different resolutions have different aspect ratios, right? So when you choose a resolution, you want to be careful and make sure that anything round still looks round, right? So if it's at the right aspect ratio for your monitor, then when you look at a circle, a picture of a circle, for example, it will look like a circle. It won't be, flattened top to bottom or flattened left to right, So try to find an appropriate resolution that not only gives you the size of icons that you want, but also maintains the proper aspect ratio so that you're not looking at everything in a distorted way, right? So um, there are other options for multiple displays, etc. I won't jump into that for this tutorial, but I will also mention that there is a night light which you can turn on, and that will just make it easier. It'll change your display, the brightness and tone of your display, so that when bedtime is approaching, essentially, uh, your eyes won't be getting the kind of light, or as much of the kind of light that will keep you awake. And studies have shown it is beneficial to have that kind of thing turned on. So let's close out that area. And the final thing that I'd like to show you is just what to do about default programs. So, Edge is going to be your default browser when you buy your Windows 10, out of the box, right? But if you prefer using Chrome or Firefox, then you can click on the Start button and type in the word default, and you can then see the default apps option. So click on that. Right? And then you can go down and under web browser, you can click there and choose whichever web browser you'd actually prefer to be using, right? So I've chosen Firefox, but of course you can choose whatever browser happens to be installed on your system that you prefer to use, right? And you can always reset to the Microsoft defaults if you want to. And there's also a way to choose default applications by file type. So, if you clicked here, for example, and you were wanting to specify which app it opens PDF files, so you could scroll down to the PDF entry, which is way down here. We're getting closer. All right, so here we go. So here's PDF. So right now, Microsoft Edge is the option for opening PDFs, but say it can also, the system can also open them in Firefox or Google Chrome. Since Firefox is my default browser, I'm going to choose that as my default PDF viewer. Although what I really suggest, and I haven't done it yet on this system, is for PDFs, install the free Adobe Acrobat Reader and have that as your default for PDFs. Well, hopefully this is a decent introduction for you to Windows 10. Thanks for watching, and if there's anything else you would like to see or explore, just mention that in the comments below. Thanks.